One of the things that I struggle with is that, I'm a scientist by nature. Okay. I was the science fair kid when I was in elementary school. I was an introvert. I got into computer programming. I went to MIT and I fell in love with the scientific method. So when I hear about a vaccine in a biological sense, the fact that it works makes sense to me. So then I think, okay, it must be a good thing. And I never, until I started speaking with Robert Kennedy last week, I never really started peeling back the layers of the vaccine industry, which it seems to me different than the pure science of a vaccine. And so my problem is my thinking was wrapped up in something that, yeah, it should probably work biologically, but the reality is a whole different world. Does that make sense that I would think that way? And do a lot of people think that way too?
Yes, a lot of people think that way because we've got a multi-generational 200-year propagation of false information. Because they say safe and effective over and over and over again doesn't make it true. And so, but people, that's what people hear. They believe that vaccines have been fully tested for safety, which they haven't. They've never been tested against a true placebo. Now, even since 2016, the World Health Organization says if you want to bring a new vaccine to market, it's unethical to have a true placebo in your control arm. You have to use a vaccine, a similar vaccine that they have already decided is safe. And then what you're actually doing is you're comparing the side effects of a new vaccine to the side effects of an existing vaccine. And if they're the same, well, they're safe enough. And so I think that people have a lot of misunderstanding about safety. They have a great misunderstanding about the word efficacy, because we as consumers, and I think even most physicians, when you hear the word effective, you think that means it works. It protects you from getting sick. But that's really not the definition of effective, and that's not how it works. Effective, by definition, if you look it up in the Webster Dictionary, what effective says, it says it does what it's intended to do. So when you inject a vaccine, what it's intended to do is to create an antibody response. So if it does, then scientifically and accurately, they can say that the vaccine is effective. But therein lies the rub. Because if you developed an antibody, is that antibody going to keep you from getting sick? Does it provide protection? And in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of other people, it absolutely does not. Because you can have very high antibody levels and still contract the infection, even tetanus. I mean, the CDC came out with their most recent study, was probably in 2012, that people can have 4 or more tetanus shots, have very high antibody levels, and if you have a dirty wound that happens to have a tetanus spore in there, you can still contract the infection. And that was probably the place, Brian, where it really got me. I really understood at that point what a fallacy it is about having an antibody level, an antibody, and particularly a falsely induced antibody level from a vaccine, which the antibodies that are created after you've had the real infection are different. They're a different type of antibody, and they have interacted with both parts of the immune system. And so I think that you're right. I think a lot of people have this misunderstanding about safety and efficacy and what it really means to work. And I also think that most people, including most physicians, because I thought this for a really long time until I started digging into this 20 years ago, that the only thing that's in a vaccine is a little attenuated or weakened virus and some sterile water, or a little clip off of the side of a bacteria and some sterile water. Nobody gives any thought to what else is coming through that needle. And so, I mean, it was really surprising to me when I first started looking at it. And I think that's where a lot of people jump off, is when they start seeing all the different ingredients in vaccines. They're like, wow, I had no idea that that was what was coming through the needle. So even the scientific part, like you were talking about, you thought that it should work from its inception. It's not been created properly. And I think people are maybe a little deceived about that.